If you have anterior pelvic tilt, you might have low back pain, hip pain, you might just feel like you're constantly tight and stiff, you can't move your legs properly. In this video, we're gonna talk about what causes bad posture, what causes anterior pelvic tilt. We're going to destroy some of the myths around anterior pelvic tilt and genetics. And if you watch through to the end of the video, I'm going to be sharing one really powerful exercise that'll help you fix anterior pelvic tilt. First, let's define what bad posture and good posture are. So from the side view, good posture means that you can draw a line from just in front of your ankle bone, through the knee, through the hip joint, through the shoulder, and right by the ear. The spine should have no giant curves. Everything should be gentle curves that seem relatively balanced. Bad posture from the side view is any deviation of this. That could be forward head posture, that could be hunchback posture, that could be anterior pelvic tilt, it could be knee hyperextension, it could be all kinds of things in combination. From the front view, we're just looking for symmetry. We don't want to see tilts and shifts. Everything should just be lined up and looking as close as possible to symmetrical from side to side. In the case of anterior pelvic tilt, we're really looking at what the low back is doing and what the pelvis is doing from the side view. People are often told that their bad posture is a result of genetics. They're told that it's basically your parents' fault and your grandparents' fault and like everybody in your bloodline, it's all led to you having bad posture. The problem is this makes you just a helpless victim and also ignores physiological realities. The position you're sitting in right now is determined by your muscles. The position of my arm right now is determined by my muscles. To say that your posture is just a product of your genetics is to ignore the fact that you have muscles that control the position of your bones. Ultimately, your posture is largely overwhelmingly determined by the activity of the muscles in your body. Unless your bones grow very, very differently from everybody else's, like in scoliosis, the bones are not going to be the key determinant of your posture. It's important to ATM, always think muscles, when you're thinking about anterior pelvic tilt. Now let's talk about how to fix anterior pelvic tilt. I'm going to lay out the big picture here, and I just want you to recognize that your individual process may look a little different than somebody else's for some reasons that I'm going to call out. With anterior pelvic tilt, you often find people have weak abdominals, weak hip flexors, weak hamstrings, and weak hip muscles in general. In addition, there are some muscles that tend to be very short. The hip flexor muscles tend to be very short. In addition to being weak, the muscles in your groin and your inner thigh also tend to be short. The hamstrings near the knee also tend to be short, and they can also be short and dysfunctional near the pelvis. The deeper hip rotators can also be short and weak, and the low back muscles are almost always stuck in a shortened position, and they're just not used to opening up and allowing the lower back to go into flexion. For a lot of women and really flexible men, the short muscles are not really that short. So you'll often see women who do a lot of yoga be very flexible and have muscles that can achieve length with no problem, who are still stuck in anterior pelvic tilt. For people like that, doing stretches to fix short hip flexors is a total waste of time and often leads to more hip and back pain. Athletes who do a lot of weightlifting will often claim, I can't possibly have weak hip muscles or weak leg muscles. I lift weights. There's no way that's a problem. The reality is weight training is often very limited in the motions that you are performing, and some of them, like deadlifting, can often exacerbate anterior pelvic tilt. One clear example of this is that most typical weightlifting routines involve no exercises that strengthen the hip flexors in a lengthened position. And that's to say nothing about how poor the form is for the average person out there lifting weights at the gym. Some of the advice that you see around anterior pelvic tilt is geared towards athletes and may not apply to you. And if you're a very flexible person, it's very, very important to recognize that advice that works for a weightlifting athlete is not going to work for you to fix your anterior pelvic tilt. An athlete or an office worker may need to do a lot more stretching to get their hip muscles to start working correctly. A really flexible yoga practitioner, not so much. So in summary, to fix your bad posture and your anterior pelvic tilt, you need to address both the lifestyle issues and the exercise side of things. If you have bad posture, then you need to look at lifestyle. Make sure your workstation, your car seat, your work desk, everything is set up in a way that's going to help you get out of that bad posture. If you walk a certain way, sit a certain way, play a certain sport, you need to pay attention to how it affects your bad posture and your anterior pelvic tilt. In addition, you need to be doing exercises that help make all of that easier. You need to turn on dormant and dysfunctional muscles that cause bad posture and anterior pelvic tilt. With that in mind, I'm going to share one exercise with you right now that'll help you whether you're stiff or really flexible, whether you're an athlete or somebody who sits at a desk all day. This is really good for turning on your hamstrings and your whole posterior in a way you've probably never done before. For this exercise, you're going to need a couch or some other low surface like a bench or some stools to put your feet on. You're going to lie down on the floor with your feet elevated. You want your feet pointing straight up. Your arms are just going to be at your sides to help you stay balanced and symmetrical. Then you're going to lift your butt up off of the floor while still maintaining posterior pelvic tilt. When you do this, keep your abs engaged. Think about firing your hamstrings to dig in your heels to the couch and lift your body up. You don't have to go super far, especially in the beginning. When you go up, you may try to go really high up, and then you're just going to use your back muscles to go into extension. So keep that posterior pelvic tilt and then lift yourself up. You do not have to keep your knees perfectly locked and straight while doing this. It's a good idea to try to keep them pretty straight, but if you feel like your knees are hurting because you're hyperextending them, or you know you have the ability to hyperextend your knees, then do not hyperextend. A little bit of knee bend is okay. It'll help you feel your hamstrings still and keep the knees feeling safe. Over time, if you can control it with straighter knees, that's great. But don't go into hyperextension while doing this. As you get familiar with this exercise, you may find that you're just not getting any altitude, or you may find that it's really easy in this position. You can start to explore other positions to see if you can find weak spots in your hamstrings depending on the foot position. So that will look like this. If I want to go wider, I'll move my feet apart, still maintain that posterior pelvic tilt, fire the hamstrings to lift myself up, really focus on feeling even contraction on both sides. If that gets easy or feels easy right off the bat, I can also go to a fully narrow position with the feet together and try that. All the angles in between are also helpful and important to explore when you find you have the time and the inclination. You can just start here at the neutral and then try all those other positions. A final thing to explore with this exercise is the amount of rotation in your legs. So you may find that doing this exercise with your legs internally rotated is really challenging, but doing it externally rotated is really easy. You want to find different variations that present new challenges and really show you what's weak in your hamstrings. If you find that one side is weaker than the other, you can train this asymmetrically by weighting more onto one side. So for example, if you find that one side just doesn't contract as well as the other side, you can give it more work to do. So for example, if I come up and I feel like my left side is weaker, I can try to take less work in the right leg. I can bend the knee a little bit so it's not doing as much and just force the left leg to do all of the work, or 70 or 80% of the work. And that will train that side to catch up in strength to the other side. Doing this exercise can be beneficial as slow, controlled repetitions. It can also be beneficial to do this exercise with very long holds of 30 to 60 seconds where you're just maintaining your position in space while still keeping posterior pelvic tilt and all your hamstrings activated. Work on doing both repetitions and holds so that over time you develop the ability to be dynamic and static using all the right muscles. That exercise can be really helpful for kicking your hamstrings and teaching you to maintain a more neutral spine while your hamstrings and butt are working. When you're first starting with it, I'd suggest doing it just every other day and do 2 sets with some rest in between each set. Make sure to use slow repetitions and go anywhere between 5 and 10 repetitions. Make sure that you're executing properly and you're not using your low back to do the exercise. If you'd like to learn some powerful exercises to help you with your bad posture and fix your anterior pelvic tilt, and you want to learn which exercises not to do if you have anterior pelvic tilt, be sure to check out the description box and the link at the end of this video. You're going to learn a lot of good stuff. So if you like this video, be sure to share it on Reddit, share it with your friends, share it on the TalkTix, and click the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification. And as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.